Welcome to another episode of Golden Nuggets, Tips and Tales powered by Property Finder, bringing you real tools, real tactics, and real talk from the region's top real estate professionals. Stay tuned for practical, no fluff advice, because behind every great listing is an agent armed with top tips and powerful takeaways you won't want to miss. Today I am with Alba Cavallo Esclapez, one of Property Finder's super agents since day one. She is at Elite Property and you've been there since the beginning of your career?
I was actually, I think, the first agent I hired.
Okay, so 5 years in the industry. You've seen a lot, I'm sure. So what would your top tips be for home seekers before they even start searching online, would you say?
I would say it's totally normal to be confused and not knowing what you want or what you're looking for, but definitely have a list of what your non-negotiables are.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that start looking and they go over like 10 different communities. They try to compare them. And sometimes they actually need to analyze like, okay, but I work in this area. Does this make sense for me? It's just because of a small different price point and that's why I'm going so far off from where I'm going. But am I going to actually be happy being in this community? It is literally just going through the most important things that will matter on the longer term for you, especially as an end user, I would say. A lot of clients I've had before as well would come in to see apartments thinking, oh, yeah, no, that will do. And they're like, okay, actually, I don't like this layout. I prefer to have 2 bathrooms or I prefer to have the kitchen this way. But when they start searching, they just go through any listing they could have a look at and say, just show me everything you've got. I think it's very important to be more selective just to avoid your own type of confusion and waste of time. Say it's a family, right? And you have to think about the school for the kids. You have to think also maybe about the areas where the parents work. You can compare maybe 2 communities, I'd say probably even 3. When it comes to family, sometimes I think it's a bit easier to narrow it down because it will be very much guided by the schools for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that you have so much options in terms of what to look where. When it comes to just an end user, I think nowadays also traffic, it's becoming a thing with us, even though things are improving. But if the commute, for instance, for work is going to be something that you don't want to deal with, or if you know that your social life happens mostly on downtown, but you live in Marina, I think those little things that people sometimes don't even take into consideration will make a big difference later on.
And you mentioned some non-negotiables. So what are some of the non-negotiables leads have come to you with?
It comes down sometimes to sizes as well. People like to have 2 bathrooms, for instance, in a 1-bedroom apartment because they want to be very private and rather have a powder room for the guests. If you have a small family, they always ask for a maid's room just for that extra help or whatever could be. And on the bigger luxury side, for some people having a driver's room, maid's room, nanny's room, all those things in the same house or maybe attached to the house are definitely a non-negotiable. So it depends obviously on the budgets and the type of property we're looking into, but people tend to be a lot more picky once they actually start looking into properties.
Yes, yeah, and it would help if they defined what their non-negotiables are before they even picked up the phone and started speaking to agents. So for me, there's a long list, but you need to narrow down what floor preference you have. Some people might not prefer to be
Highest floor.
High floor. Some people might not prefer to be a low floor. You could have view. The view could be a non-negotiable, like if it's facing another building or if there's construction or if it's a sea view. All of these things you should work out. What other non-negotiables are there?
Amenities are a big thing nowadays as well. Well, it's a given. We know that every building pretty much in Dubai has pool and gym minimum as part of the amenities. All the new developments are coming out with these like cinema rooms and nurseries and everything else. For some people, those things are very important, especially if you work from home and depending on which side of town you're as well. Because at the end, if you're going to pretty much spend most of the time within your building and your community, you want to be accessible to anything whenever you want as well, for sure.
So are these questions that you'd ask on the initial phone call? Or you'd wait for the consultation? You like to have consultations, don't you?
I'd rather have a proper chat, as I said, face to face with them. On the phone call, they usually will come up with a budget and the amount of bedrooms they're looking for.
Right.
And
Basic-
that's just the
basic
basic
information.
ground, exactly. But just because of a specific budget doesn't mean that the community they thought would be ideal. It's actually what is going to actually work out for them. You do need a few more questions, as I said, schools or not schools, community-wise. I do ask, like, where do you spend your social time mostly in? Do you think this area is actually going to work for you? That helps to narrow down options for sure.
And I think another thing that would be really useful to hear from a super agent like yourself is, how do you decide what your budget is? Of course, sometimes you might be restricted by affordability, but how do you come up with a figure? This is my budget for this purchase.
This is a tricky one, and it really varies from one client to another. You obviously have people that can afford different things, and it really comes down to probably what's the flashiest thing you can offer within a set price that they think it's fair. But you do have a lot of end users which are more emotional buyers, and they're literally squeezing every single dirham out of their pocket in order to make that purchase. And I see that especially a lot when sometimes I'm helping friends with the first purchase, because rentals are high nowadays, let's face it. So it makes more sense to put that as a down payment towards a mortgage. And you have to be very mindful up to the last fee that it might come up for them, right?
And a lot of buyers don't necessarily know all the upfront costs involved. I mean, there is, on every listing on Property Finder, you do have a breakdown of, okay, if you purchase this property with a mortgage, here's how much it is. Here's what you can expect the upfront cost to be. And I think a lot of those fees surprise people. They don't know that maybe you have to pay, of course they know they have to pay an agency commission, but they might not know about the mortgage arrangement fees or DLD transfer fees. Can you just tell us about some of the upfront costs involved?
That's something that actually shocks a lot of people. In Europe, in a lot of countries, you can get, for instance, on a mortgage, 100% financing. And a lot of people don't know that here it's up to 80%. And if you go above the 5 million mark, then you go down to 70%. And so a lot of people set a higher budgets for the properties, not knowing that they need that extra cash up front. The fees, we mention them on the listings most of the times, yes. But then when it comes down to final redefining numbers, there's always something above your first expectations. So when they come up unsure of the budget as well, I just give a random example, starting from a lower point, say 2 million. I'm like, if you are mortgaging a property of 2 million, you should expect minimum this much cash up front for you to make sense. Do you have those funds right now before we start even looking into the 2 million?
And is it here?
And do you have them ready 100%? A lot of them will be like, okay, actually I can go a bit above this. Most of them sometimes are like, oh, I thought I could mortgage this much and I could do this much. And then you break down the fees, and when you add everything up, it comes down to almost 7% on fees. A few months ago, now it's changed, but we could actually include some of those fees as part of the mortgage. Now it's been removed. So those are extra fees that people need to factor in
to their decision.
Yeah. Okay. So when people are not so sure about the number that they're looking for in terms of like setting their own budget, it does help just giving them an example on a random budget and say, this is how much cash you need. What's the situation like right now?
Worldwide, every city has a salary to mortgage ratio.
As a rule of thumb, approximately 30% of your salary is what should go towards a mortgage, even as a couple combined, for instance.
So 30% of you and whoever you're moving in with towards rent or mortgage even.
Correct.
So that's a kind of good little guideline to assess your budget for monthly repayments. Okay, and what should home seekers know before they actually start doing viewings?
First of all, I would say timelines. We all know that our market is very active at the moment. Doing a viewing knowing that you're not ready for another 3, 4, 5 months, it's a waste of time both for you and the agent itself. First, because the property most probably will not be available anymore. market price will probably change in 4 months' time. So definitely have your timelines according to what you're planning on doing, and have your paperwork ready. If you are a mortgage buyer, have you started your pre-approval? Are you missing any documents? It's just all those little things that a lot of people don't even consider. Something as silly as having a checkbook. We all know, well, most of us know, for a deposit to block a unit or put a reservation, you need to put down a 10% deposit check, right? A lot of clients that I've had have started with the whole process, found the property, great. I'm in the process of a pre-approval, great. Okay, I need the check. What check? And it's something very small and insignificant for some people, but because probably back home in their countries, you do not use this check process system.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of coming with all the decision makers, if properties are going quickly, you should be ready to make an offer then and there, right? And if that involves other decision makers, bring them along with you to the viewing. What about negotiations?
That's a tricky one. You will have all sorts of sellers and buyers in this market. You will have sellers that are really attached to a number and they're not willing to budge on that number. Buyers always come in with the expectation that if a property is listed at this price, for sure I can knock off 100 or 200K out of this property price. They always saying that we inflate the prices just so then they can negotiate it down. But it isn't always the case.
And sometimes if it's a hot property, it may end up going for a price over the listing price because there's so much demand for it or there's so much competition, other people are interested.
Funny mentioning this right now, actually. I had once a very funny situation that I've never seen before. I had a client looking for a 1-bedroom at the Palm, willing to pay the market price agreed. Seller was a normal seller, so asking a reasonable price. And he was already living in the building. So he just wanted to have another unit in the same floor, just to be able to have like a second office, if you want to say so. Fun enough, his neighbor also wanted to do the same.
Right.
It generally started into a battle. Like they were each other giving 100K extra to the seller, trying to say, no, if he's offering you 2.5, I'll give you 2.6. Okay, I'll give you 2.7. I'll give you 2.8. And I got to a point that I was like, are we all joking here? It's actually serious. It makes no sense. It was a fairly priced property. It was a done deal. Why are we battling?
So you were representing the seller and both the neighbors.
And the neighbors. And I was like, I can't like... I was like, are we serious now? I'm not giving offers for the sake of giving offers right now on this. And it ended up selling for a high price compared to market prices at that point.
So essentially you ended up in an auction situation where it was going to the highest.
I genuinely thought initially it was a joke. When I kept on getting this like higher offer back and forth within 2 days, I was like, this cannot be true.
It's a case of if you price it correctly and there's a demand for it, you may end up getting over the listing price. So people shouldn't necessarily assume they can knock off a couple 100,000 off the listing price because that's what agents do. They inflate the price of property. So, okay. Any final tips for the home seeker?
I would definitely say that time kills the deal.
Oh, I've heard that a couple of times in this series. Yeah.
And it could be on secondary market or especially in off-plan.
Just explain what you mean by time-killing deals.
You need to be 100% ready when you find the property and you want to make that offer. Make the offer, but go through it at the same time you're doing it. Don't rest on it for a couple of days or a week because the property is going to be gone. That happens very often on the secondary market. Doing a viewing today and tomorrow it's not there anymore. If you're serious about your purchase, don't think your agent is just being pushy. It's genuinely trying to get you the best deal out of the best property that you found. And in off-plan happens the same. Most of the launches that we're seeing nowadays, they sell out within 2 hours.
Right.
If I'm calling you at 7 in the morning, I need your check now. It's not because I want to be pushy, but you really want that property. I'm happy to get it for you, but I need you to collaborate with me on this. So just listen to your agent, the person that you actually trust to represent you, and don't think that they're being pushy. They're generally just trying to get the best deal out of it, and don't overthink it.
I love that advice. That's really useful. Hope you enjoyed those tips and tales. Why not binge the rest of the season?